Well, we're back at it and working towards our goal of getting a fishable house. Yet this year, we're focused on insulating the inside of the house. Before we jump into foaming, we've got a few minor side quests to take care of. The first of which is installing our gas line from our propane locker over to where the furnace is going to be. We're going to start by installing a brass bulkhead coupling for the gas line, and at the same time we're going to install a plastic gland nut to run the electrics in. As always, gratuitous measurements are in order. Once supremely confident in our measurements, we'll mark out our holes. First operation is to drill a larger hole in the foam to allow us to get the smaller hole drilled for the bulkhead pass-through. Then we move on to drill the actual hole for the pass-through. Once we get most of the way through, I come around from the back side and finish off. Do a quick dry fit. Looks like that's going to work. Now, as we've done with other through-hole mounting components on the rig, I am going to put a backer plate in there just to add a little more material where that bulkhead nut needs to lock in. So we'll draw on the magic and wonder of the Unibit to drill and deburr our hole. Now, while we're in the shop, we're also going to put together some of these gas fittings while it's easy on the bench. And we'll kick off with Blue Monster's PTFE pipe thread sealant, which is as high performing as it is aromatic. We're going to need a few brass 90-degree angles to get the hose to route where we want it. So that's one of the first fittings we'll put on here is a brass nipple onto a 90-degree bend. Once fully tightened, we end up with this assembly. Next step is to attach the hose that will be routed inside the house to get to the furnace. We put some thread compound on the hose threads and attach it to our previous assembly. Tighten it up, turning the hose as we tighten. And when completed, here's our final assembly. Now, if you remember the raceways we installed in one of the previous episodes underneath the rig that got foamed in, that is exactly where we're going to route this gas line from one side of the rig over to the other where the furnace is going to be mounted. Then it's time to take our brass fitting assembly, our aluminum mounting plate, and bolt it in. Lastly, we need another 90-degree bend on the inside of the propane box here to route the hose up to the regulator. Now, I unfortunately don't have the hose that goes from this fitting up to the regulator, so I think that's where we're going to stop this side quest for today, and we'll conclude the propane plumbing on a future episode. That'll bring us to the next little project here, which is to complete installation of the Maxxair fan on the front of the rig. We start out by cutting the rough opening above where we framed out in one of the previous episodes. To do so, I am using a sheet metal nibbler, which is not probably the right tool for this. I would not use it again next time, but we traumatically and painfully go through the effort, and it eventually gets it done. Once completed, we clean up the edges a little bit and begin cleaning the surface to install the upper vent assembly. After completing the cleaning, we install the upper bezel of the Maxxair fan. I didn't capture it, unfortunately, but we do put some butyl rubber around the perimeter to seal the bezel to the top of the rig. After poking, prodding, shimming it into proper position, we're ready for fastening. We use self-drilling sheet metal screws that are thick enough to go down through the sheet metal and into that square aluminum tubing frame we did on one of the previous episodes. And here's where you can see some of that butyl rubber squeezing up in between and up through the screw hole that gives us a nice hermetic seal. After getting the fan bezel fully affixed, it's time to place the upper fan assembly. The upper fan assembly is simply held on by 4 Phillips head screws. That'll wrap up the Max fan installation for today, and we'll revisit once we get to wiring. Now, finally on to foaming. Like last time, lots of prep. We start with boxing out the wheel wells. This 1x material will block off the top and sides to create a cavity for the foam. We're using some self-drilling wood to sheet metal screws that make the job pretty quick. After that, it's time for acetone action. Degreasing, cleaning, and removing all the filth. Now on to masking. So we want to take care of the windows. We start with painter's tape and use some plastic over that. We'll do the exact same on the rear ramp door and the side entry door. Moving to the floor, we cover with plastic. I also put down some cardboard and extra plywood I had just to make sure that sticks in place. Then we grab a fresh tip, turn on the tanks, and get to foaming. Now I've captured the entire process here and sped up and condensed it to about 5 minutes. I'll be chiming in with comments and fun facts every once in a while here. But take time to enjoy the soothing and almost ASMR-like qualities of experiencing spray foaming. you'll notice a "push me" written on the wall right there. That's behind the propane locker. And when I put it in there, the skin pushed in a little bit, so I wanted it flush with the back of that propane locker. So we push on that sheet metal while we let the foam harden and cure. The goal of today is to get a good first coat on filling the cavities here. It's gonna be close. I tried to calculate the board feet needed here. I think we're gonna come up a little short, but we'll see at the end of the day. The plan is, after this first coat, we'll install some wooden furring strips along the inside of the rig for mounting interior walls, and then come back with a second coat to fill that entire cavity flush. Another quick discussion, a lot of folks when they do a big build like this will do their wiring first and then encapsulate the wiring in the foam insulation. My strategy is a little different in that I prefer an automotive style wiring where it's after the fact. I'm going to put some raceways and channels and different places I can route wires so that I can upgrade, fix, and get to that wiring post installation. Another note, the tanks I'm using are 600 board feet tanks, which is 600 square feet at 1 inch thick. Another note, it was a nice warm day, and that warm temperature is really good for the yield of the foam, but the foam itself is an exothermic reaction, so it was getting extremely hot inside of the rig there, so the opening of that door was very much a relief. Nearing the end here, the tanks are starting to sputter and the mix ratio of the two tanks starts to get off. So I tried to just squeak out the last little bit here and do the perimeters of each of these box sections before we call it a day. Thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate it. Stay tuned for the fervor of our next episode.